The night split open with lightning. Saren ran. Bare feet tore across the soaked earth, each step sending mud and blood splattering behind her. The forest was a cathedral of shadows, ancient trunks rising like pillars, their crowns whispering curses in a language older than men. The storm howled above, and beneath it, another sound joined, the baying of wolves. Her pack. Her hunters. Her breath rasped, half a sob, half a prayer. The air tasted of iron, her own blood where silver had bitten her wrist during the Luna trial. The wound still glowed faintly, seared by sacred fire. She pressed her palm against it, feeling the throb of a mark she no longer wanted. She had failed the trial. No, she had chosen to fail. The council would call her coward. Her mate would call her traitor. But Saren had seen what victory demanded: obedience, silence, the cage disguised as a crown. She would rather run through the jaws of the wild than bow before another alpha who spoke of destiny as if it were a leash. She stumbled, catching herself on a root slick with rain. Pain shuddered through her ankle. Behind her, torches flared like angry stars weaving through the trees. Voices followed, chants of the sacred oath twisted into a hunt cry. Find the fallen Luna. By moonlight, she cannot escape. Saren bit back a cry. The forest responded for her, a chorus of ravens breaking from their perches, black wings slicing the storm. She pushed onward. The path plunged downward toward the gorge, where the river roared like a living beast. Each gust carried the scent of wet stone, moss, and danger. Her hair, once braided in ceremonial silver cords, clung to her face in dark, tangled ropes. Somewhere within the storm's roar, another rhythm pulsed, steady, deliberate. Footsteps. Not many. Just one. Too heavy for a scout. Too calm for a hunter. Saren froze behind a fallen oak, chest heaving. The air changed, denser, charged. Wolves sensed power before sight, and what she felt now coil round her like smoke. Running from ghosts, little star, a voice murmured. Deep. Smooth. Dangerous. She knew that voice from whispered warnings. Draven, alpha of the Shadowfangs. Rival pack. Cursed bloodline. The one her elders said was born from the union of wolf and shadow itself. He should have been leagues away, guarding his borders. Yet here he was, his presence pressing through the rain like heat through mist. Saren pressed closer to the tree trunk, pulse hammering. Her inner wolf snarled, wanting to fight, but exhaustion pinned her still. I can smell the lie on you, Draven said quietly, as if speaking to the forest. You didn't fail the trial. You fled it. Lightning revealed him, tall, dark hair plastered to his jaw, armor slick with rain. His eyes burned amber through the gloom, feral yet knowing. The storm seemed to bend around him, unwilling to touch. Saren's throat tightened. She whispered to herself, don't move. Don't breathe. He turned his head slightly, nostrils flaring. He had already found her. Come out, Saren of the silver blood, he said. Or must I drag you from the dark? Her name on his tongue felt like a spell. No one from her pack had spoken it without venom since the trial. Hearing it now, low, certain, unmocking, cracked something inside her chest. When she didn't move, he sighed. Very well. The next moment, he vanished. A blur of motion, faster than sight. A rush of cold air struck her from behind, then hands, strong and rough, caught her shoulders. Saren spun, blade flashing from her thigh strap. He caught her wrist mid-swing, twisting until the knife clattered into mud. They froze, her breath against his fingers still around her pulse. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The forest seemed to hold its breath too. Draven's eyes searched hers, not with cruelty but with recognition, like he'd been chasing this moment far longer than she'd been running. Your power's leaking, he murmured. You'll burn yourself if you don't learn to cage it. Saren's mark flared, casting faint silver light between them. He released her wrist slowly, as though she were a flame he feared to extinguish. "I don't need your help," she said. The words trembled more than she meant them to. "I didn't offer it," he replied. "I offered a warning." Lightning carved his silhouette against the trees, broad shoulders, cloak torn by claws not his own. Every line of him spoke of command, but his voice carried weariness too, a shadow of battles fought long before tonight. "Why follow me?" she asked. "Because I saw you burn the trial ground," he said simply. "Because the moon answered you, not them." Her breath caught. "That's impossible." "Then why?" He stepped closer. "Does the earth tremble when you bleed?" Saren backed away until bark pressed against her spine. The storm had quieted, only the drip of water from leaves and the thunder of her pulse remained. He studied her for a long moment, then pulled a dark cloak from his shoulder and held it out. "You'll freeze before sunrise. My camp is near. Come, or don't. The hunters won't stop." He turned, walking toward the deeper woods without waiting for her answer. She stood trembling, torn between distrust and the faint, forbidden pull that tightened in her chest. The story said Shadowfang alphas were ruthless, yet something about the way he'd spoken, low, measured, almost gentle, didn't fit the monster legend painted. Saren looked at the mark on her wrist. The glow had faded to an ember, but its heat remained. She swallowed hard, then followed the faint imprint of his boots through the mud. The path wound down toward the valley, where mist coiled like silver smoke. Wolves howled somewhere far behind, her pack closing in, but the forest itself seemed to shift, guiding her steps away from them. The storm eased, but the night did not rest. The forest breathed heavy with mist and memory. Saren moved through the trees like a ghost of her own making, her cloak dragging against wet leaves. Every step stung, a reminder of what she'd lost, of the trial she had failed not by weakness but by choice. She should have died beneath that sacred moon. She had meant to. Yet fate, cruel and clever, had other designs. Behind her, the howls of the pack faded into the distance, swallowed by the forest. The storm had given her cover, but also isolation. She was alone now, a rogue, marked and banished. In the old tongue, they called it luna-cursed. The kind of exile no wolf survived long. A branch snapped behind her. She froze. The scent on the wind wasn't human, it was sharp, metallic, ancient. Alpha blood. She turned, and he was there, half shadow, half man. Draven. His presence filled the clearing like thunder that refused to fade. His dark hair was plastered to his face by rain, his eyes burning gold even in the dying stormlight. "Running from your own death, Saren?" His voice was rough, carved from the same stone as the mountains that guarded the kingdom's borders. Saren's heart clenched. "I wasn't running. I was leaving." He stepped closer. "Leaving is what cowards do. He paused, his gaze narrowing, "you chose to fail. I watched you kneel before the moon and offer it nothing. You made the gods turn away." Her throat tightened. "Better they turn from me than chain me to a destiny I never asked for." Draven studied her, and for a moment, the forest seemed to bow beneath the weight of his silence. Then he spoke, softer now. "You think rejection frees you? It was the only freedom I had left." He reached out, catching her wrist before she could retreat. His touch burned through the damp cold, his strength impossible to ignore. "Freedom doesn't mean survival. You know what happens to a Luna without a pack." Saren tore her hand away, eyes flashing silver. "Then let the forest take me. At least it won't lie." Something flickered across his face. Something not entirely cruel. He took a slow breath, his tone shifting from accusation to curiosity. "Tell me, Saren Starborn, what truth are you running toward that's worth dying for?" She hesitated. The question was dangerous because it almost sounded like care. "The truth that my fate is my own. No alpha, no moon, no bloodline can decide it." Draven's gaze softened, barely, then hardened again, as though he couldn't afford to believe her. The world doesn't bend for ideals. It breaks them. Then let it break me, she whispered. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the drip of rain from the trees. Then Draven turned away, his cloak flaring behind him. There's a cabin beyond the ridge. It belonged to the old hunters. Stay there before the cold kills you. But when dawn comes, he paused, glancing back. You're no longer under my pack's mercy. If I find you again, you'll wish the moon had taken you. He left without another word, and his scent lingered long after his shadow vanished into the mist. Saren stood there for what felt like hours, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. Then, shivering, she moved toward the ridge. The cabin was little more than a ruin, stone walls overgrown with ivy, a hearth choked with ashes. But it was shelter. She collapsed beside the cold hearth, pulling her knees to her chest. The silence was unbearable. Every creak in the wood felt like a voice whispering from the gods she had denied. She wondered if they watched her still, the fallen Luna who had dared to defy the sacred bond. As the first faint light of dawn crept through the cracks, she closed her eyes. The wind carried a distant howl, one that was neither warning nor call, but something in between. Draven was still out there. And though he claimed otherwise, she could feel it, he would find her again. Not because duty demanded it, but because something older than both their fates had already begun to pull them back together. When morning finally bled into the forest, the world looked softer than it truly was. Mist curled around the trees like smoke from a dying fire. Saren stirred from uneasy sleep, her cloak heavy with dew. For a moment she didn't remember where she was, only that she was cold, and the silence pressed against her chest like grief made soundless. Then the memory returned. The trial. The moon. The failure. Draven's voice in the storm. She sat up slowly, her body aching in places she hadn't known could ache. Her palms were torn, her breath shallow. But what caught her attention wasn't pain, it was light. A faint silver glow pulsed beneath the skin of her right shoulder. She froze. The Luna mark. It should have vanished the moment she rejected the bond. The moon herself had witnessed it, her defiance under sacred oath. Yet now, the mark shimmered faintly, like a heartbeat she could see. No, she whispered. That's impossible. She pressed her hand to it. It burned cold beneath her touch. She tried to summon her wolf, the spirit bound within every born shifter, but the forest offered no answering echo. Only silence. Still, the mark refused to fade. Panic prickled down her spine. What had she done? Had her defiance been incomplete? Or had someone, interfered? The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. She tensed, scanning the trees. Her instincts screamed danger before her eyes caught movement. Draven stepped into the clearing again, the light behind him casting his figure in sharp relief. He had shed his cloak, his armor glinting with traces of the moon steel that only royal alphas bore. She rose to her feet, every muscle poised to flee. I told you not to be here when dawn came, he said quietly. I was leaving, she lied. His gaze flicked to her shoulder, and froze. You're marked. Saren's blood ran cold. It's nothing. Nothing? He stepped closer, voice low. The bond mark doesn't linger by accident. The moon branded you again. That's not possible, she said, backing away. I rejected it. Then why are you still glowing like the chosen? The accusation hit like a blade. She turned her face away, but he caught her chin and forced her to meet his gaze. His eyes glowed faint gold now, alpha dominance leaking through his restraint. Tell me what happened in that trial, he demanded. She tried to speak, but her voice trembled. The moon, she spoke. I thought I imagined it. She said, the bond cannot be undone. I thought she meant death would claim me. But I lived. Draven released her, his jaw tightening. You weren't supposed to hear her voice. What does that mean? It means you're not just cursed, he said grimly. You've been chosen by something that doesn't care for mortal vows. A chill rippled through her. Chosen for what? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the rising sun, his expression unreadable. The gods never give without taking something back. If they've marked you again, they want something, and it will cost blood. Saren felt the mark pulse in reply, as if mocking them both. Draven's tone softened slightly, though it carried no comfort. You can't stay here. The others will hunt you once they learn you still bear the Luna's light. Then let them come. You'd face an entire pack alone? Her eyes met his. I already am alone. For a heartbeat, his expression faltered, and for the first time, she saw not the ruthless alpha, but the man beneath the mantle. The one who had buried too many under the same moon that now cursed her. He exhaled slowly. You're stubborn. Reckless. The kind of Luna who brings ruin. And yet you're still here, she said quietly. He turned sharply, but didn't deny it. Because if you die now, I'll never know what the moon saw in you. He stepped back, his cloak swirling around him. Follow me if you wish to live. Or stay and let the gods finish what they started. Saren hesitated only a moment. Then, against every instinct screaming in her blood, she followed. They moved through the forest in silence, the light shifting from silver to gold as dawn climbed higher. Draven led with the precision of a predator who knew every path, every trap. Saren stayed a few steps behind, her eyes scanning the ancient woods. The deeper they went, the stranger the air became, thick with power, like the forest itself held its breath. She could feel eyes watching them, unseen but near. The boundary lands between the mortal and the divine. At last, they reached a ravine where a black river cut through stone. A bridge of roots spanned it, old magic. Draven crossed first, his boots barely making a sound. Saren followed, but halfway across, the mark on her shoulder flared with light so fierce she cried out. The bridge shuddered beneath her feet. Draven whirled. Saren. I can't. Before she could finish, the light burst from her skin, spiraling upward in a column of silver fire. The forest roared in answer, ancient and alive. When it faded, she was on her knees, trembling. The mark no longer glowed faintly, it burned bright as the moon itself. Draven stared, his face pale. You've awakened something that was never meant to be touched. Saren looked up at him, her eyes wide with both terror and awe. Then help me control it. He hesitated, torn between instinct and command. If I help you, I defy the council. If I don't, you'll destroy yourself. Then choose, she whispered. But do it quickly. Draven stood motionless on the edge of the ravine, eyes locked on the girl who burned brighter than the dawn. For the first time in years, he didn't know whether he was staring at a curse or a miracle. The mark on her shoulder pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat of the land itself. The air smelled of lightning and wet earth, the scent of an awakening far older than either of them. Get up, he said, but his voice carried no authority now, only disbelief wrapped in command. Saren pushed herself to her feet, unsteady, her breath fogging in the cool morning air. Her eyes glowed faintly silver still, the afterglow of divine fire lingering in her veins. What just happened? She whispered. Draven glanced at the bridge, now trembling under the weight of its own roots. You touched the ancient current. No one does that and stays human. I didn't mean to. He stepped closer, his voice sharp. Intent doesn't matter to gods, girl. Power answers to power. But she didn't flinch this time. Something in her had changed. The storm that once terrified her now bowed to her pulse. Then teach me to control it, she said softly. He stared at her for a long, silent moment. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. Draven had sworn never to interfere again, not after the wars, not after losing his first pack to the Moonfire Rebellion. The last time he'd defied the council's decree, he'd buried half his brothers under a crimson moon. But looking at Saren, trembling yet unbroken, he felt the old instinct stir, that ancient, dangerous urge to protect what the gods coveted. A low growl echoes through the distant hills. They'll scent this, he muttered, scanning the horizon. The flare of divine fire will draw every alpha within 10 miles. Hunters, priests, zealots. They'll all come. Then why aren't you running? She asked. He turned his gaze back to her, and for the first time, a flicker of something human crossed his face. Because I made a promise once, he said. To never let another be burned for what they were born to be. She frowned. You don't even know me. No, he said quietly. But I know what it's like to be hunted for a gift you never asked for. Wind rises, carrying the distant cry of a horn. The signal of pursuit. They were being tracked already. Draven swore under his breath, then tore a strip of cloth from his cloak and bound it around her shoulder to dim the mark's light. Keep that hidden. If they see the glow, they'll call you a heretic before you take another breath. Saren's pulse thudded against his fingers, hot as wildfire. And if I refuse to hide? Then they'll kill you. She met his gaze evenly. Would they kill their Luna? His jaw tightened. You failed the Luna trial, remember? I failed it on purpose. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Draven froze. What did you say? Saren swallowed hard. They wanted a puppet. A Luna who would bow to their counsel, obey every ritual, breed heirs like livestock. I couldn't be that. So I failed the trial. I let them think I wasn't strong enough. Draven's eyes narrowed. You gambled with divine judgment just to defy them? I chose freedom, she said, voice trembling. Even if it meant exile. For a heartbeat, there was silence between them, raw and electric. Then Draven gave a low, humorless laugh. You're more dangerous than I thought. I'm not dangerous, she said. I'm just done being afraid. He studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded, the kind of nod a warrior gives before breaking every rule that keeps his kingdom standing. Fine, he said. Then you'll come with me. Where? To the one place they'll never dare follow, the Shadow Keep. Saren's eyes widened. That place is a myth. So are you, Draven replied, his voice a low growl. But I'm looking right at you. Wings beat overhead, ravens scattering into the mist. They began to move again, this time following the river deeper into the forbidden woods. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as if even the sun feared to trespass here. Saren kept pace beside him, her body weary but her spirit fierce. She wanted to ask more, about the keep, about the promise he'd made, about the fire that now lived under her skin, but she knew he wouldn't answer yet. He moved like a shadow carved from moonlight, every step precise, every glance calculating. But beneath the discipline, she could sense the fracture, the man beneath the alpha, haunted by something he never spoke aloud. When they finally reached the foot of the mountains, the world had fallen silent again. The trees thinned, revealing jagged cliffs that reached for the sky like the bones of giants. Distant rumble of thunder returns, faint and constant. This is it, Draven said. Beyond those peaks lies the Shadow Keep. My territory. Saren frowned. Your pack. Used to be, he said. Now it's just ghosts. He led her along a narrow path carved into the stone, winding upward. The climb was steep and silent. Every step carried the weight of history. When they reached the summit, the sight stole her breath, an ancient fortress half buried in mist, its towers cracked but still standing. Black banners hung motionless in the still air, marked with a sigil she didn't recognize, a crescent devouring the sun. The keep, Draven said quietly. Where the moon exiled those who defied her law. And you live here? Someone has to keep the dead from rising. Low whispering wind sweeps across the battlements. Saren shivered. It feels alive. It is, Draven said. Every stone here remembers a sin. He turned to her, his expression grave. If you stay, there's no going back. The council will call you rogue. The gods will call you forsaken. And I. He hesitated, his voice roughening. I won't be able to protect you from what's coming. Saren stepped closer, the silver mark on her shoulder flickering beneath the cloth. You already have. For a moment, he didn't move. The wind caught his cloak, sending it fluttering like a dark wing. Their eyes locked, her defiance meeting his restraint, her hope daring to challenge his fear. Then, in the voice of a man surrendering to fate, he said. Then by the blood of the first wolves, I make this oath, I will guard the bearer of the silver flame, even if it damns me. The vow sealed itself in the air between them, old magic crackling like fire through bone. Saren felt it sink into her soul. An unseen bond, deeper than loyalty, older than love. And somewhere in the dark beneath the keep, something ancient stirred in answer. Night falls over the mountains. A single wolf howls, low, mournful, warning of war. Darkness came quickly to the shadow keep. The clouds moved like beasts across the sky, swallowing the moon in their jaws. Below, the ancient fortress breathed, every stone, every echo, whispering the stories of those who had once stood defiant before the gods. Saren stood at the window of her chamber, her hand resting against the cold stone. The silver mark on her shoulder glowed faintly, even through the fabric Draven had wrapped around it. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, soft, insistent, alive. She didn't know if it was a blessing or a countdown. From the courtyard below, she could hear Draven giving quiet orders. His voice was firm, controlled, but there was a tension in it, the sound of a man who knew he'd crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Metal clangs in the distance, warriors sharpening blades. The keep had begun to stir again. Once abandoned, now its halls filled with shadows and movement. Loyalists, wolves who still followed Draven despite exile, were returning. Word of the flare had spread, and they came in secret, answering their alpha's silent call. But not all who came bore loyalty. Some came for bounty. Others for blood. Saren turned as Draven entered her chamber, his armor catching the firelight. The silver edges along his vambraces were dulled, moonsteel scarred from too many battles. His hair was wet with mist, his eyes glowed faint gold beneath the hooded shadow of his brow. They're coming, he said quietly. She didn't ask who. She already knew. The council? He nodded once. Their scouts crossed the river at dusk. They'll be here by midnight. Saren's stomach tightened. Then we run. Draven shook his head. If we run, they'll send us. They'll send the moon priests after you. And no mortal outruns a priest sent. Then what do we do? He met her eyes. We hold the keep. She stared at him, disbelief flickering through fear. You can't fight the council. He almost smiled. I already am. Thunder rumbles, faint but constant. The silence between them stretched. Saren could feel the pulse of the keep beneath her feet, the rhythm of old magic waking. Every nerve in her body screamed that this was wrong, that the gods themselves were watching. Draven, she whispered, if they find me here, they'll destroy you too. He stepped closer, his voice soft but unyielding. They already tried to destroy me once. I'm still here. His gaze flicked to the mark beneath her shoulder. That power you carry, it's not a curse. It's a weapon. And tonight, the world will learn to fear it again. A horn blares in the distance, low and guttural, echoing across the mountains. Saren flinched. The air grew colder, the fire dimmer. Draven turned toward the door. They've crossed the gates. How many? Too many. He paused, his back still to her. Stay inside. No matter what you hear. If they reach this chamber. I'm not hiding, she said. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. Draven turned to face her again, and for the first time, she saw something in him that wasn't command or caution, it was awe. You failed the trial on purpose, he murmured. But maybe the gods chose you anyway. Drums beat faintly beyond the walls, war drums. The first attack came like thunder. Bolts of moon steel shattered against the gates. Wolves in silver armor swarmed the outer courtyard, their howls mingling with the sound of clashing steel. From the highest tower, Saren could see the battle unfold. Draven's soldiers, though fewer, fought like creatures born of shadow and flame. They moved with terrifying precision, their eyes gleaming with the same eerie light that once crowned kings. But the council's army was endless. And at its front, cloaked in white and gold, marched the moon priests. Their voices rose in unison, chanting words that bent the air itself. Wind howls through the corridors, carrying fragments of the chant, purge the marked. Cleanse the flame. Saren felt the mark on her shoulder flare in response, like it was answering the summons. She stumbled back from the window, her breath quickening. The light beneath her skin grew brighter, not from choice, but from instinct. No, no, not now, she whispered. The walls trembled. The air shimmered. For a brief moment, she saw something in the reflection of the window, a figure made of silver fire, shaped like her but not her. Its eyes were endless moons. Its lips moved without sound. And then it spoke, not aloud, but inside her mind. Do not hide from the fire. You are not meant to flee. Saren gasped, clutching her chest. Who are you? The part of you the gods buried. The flame they tried to silence. The voice faded with the sound of another explosion, the gates giving way. The roar of battle fills the night. Arrows whistle. Steel meets steel. Saren turned and ran. Down the corridor, through the winding halls of the keep, she could feel the rhythm of the fight, every strike, every death, every scream vibrating through the stones. The scent of blood and ozone filled the air. When she reached the courtyard, chaos reigned. Wolves in silver and black tore through each other, claws flashing under the flickering torchlight. And in the center of it all, Draven. He moved like something divine, his blade carving arcs of light through the darkness. His wolf eyes glowed molten gold, his aura so strong it bent the air around him. But even he was beginning to falter under the sheer weight of numbers. Saren's pulse quickened. The mark burned hotter. Without thinking, she stepped into the fray. Saren, no. Draven shouted, but it was too late. The moment her feet touched the blood-soaked ground, the moon above broke through the clouds. A shaft of light struck her, and the world shifted. The battlefield froze. Every warrior, friend and foe, turned toward her. The light from her mark erupted outward, a circle of silver flames sweeping through the courtyard like a living tide. It didn't burn flesh, it burned corruption. The moon priests' chants turned to screams as their own magic turned on them. Draven watched, stunned, as the woman he'd sworn to protect became something else entirely, radiant, terrible, holy. The sound drops to a heartbeat, slow, echoing, eternal. When the light faded, only silence remained. The priests lay scattered. The rest of the army had fled into the woods, their courage dissolved into terror. Saren stood in the center of the courtyard, trembling, her eyes glowing pure silver. Draven approached slowly, his sword lowered. Saren. She turned to him, not fully herself anymore. I didn't mean to. You saved us, he said. I unleashed something, she whispered. And it's not done with me. Distant rumble beneath the earth. The stones of the keep tremble softly. Draven's gaze shifted to the mountains. Then we'll find out what it wants before it finds you again. He looked back at her, eyes fierce, voice low. From this night forward, Saren, the world will call you cursed. But I will call you mine to protect. Fade into silence. The faint hum of ancient power lingers in the dark. The night returned like an old secret. Saren followed Draven deeper into the mountain's veins, through tunnels carved by hands that no longer existed. The path sloped downward, each step echoing with the whisper of old oaths. The walls shimmered faintly, veins of silver light pulsing through the stone, not from torches, but from something living beneath the rock. Draven moved ahead in silence, his torch unlit. He didn't need it. The faint glow from the walls was enough to reveal his way, and Saren noticed how the light always bent toward him, as if the shadows feared him. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a vast underground hall. The roof arched high, supported by black pillars etched with runes older than the kingdom itself. Rivers of moonlight flowed between them, gathering in a central pool that glowed with silver mist. Above it, the ceiling split open to reveal a glimpse of the sky, the moon staring down like an unblinking eye. Saren stopped at the edge, her breath catching. "Where are we?" Draven's voice carried softly through the chamber. "The sanctum of the first pack. Where the bloodlines were born. Where the gods first gave the wolves their curse." She stepped closer, drawn by the faint hum of power that seemed to throb from the water. The light reflected in her eyes, making them gleam silver. "You brought me here." "Why?" "Because this is where your mark can be hidden," he said, his tone measured. "And where I can understand what the moon wants of you before the council finds out." She turned to him sharply. "You think I'm a threat? I think you're a miracle that shouldn't exist." His honesty was cold, but it wasn't cruel. Saren wrapped her cloak tighter and looked away. "And what about you, Draven? What are you to this place?" "The last of the Oathbound," he said after a moment. "My bloodline swore to protect the secrets buried here, even from our own kind." He walked toward the central pool and knelt beside it, tracing a symbol in the water. The surface rippled, and images began to form, faint outlines of wolves, warriors, and moons splitting like broken mirrors. "The first Luna was not chosen," he murmured. "She was created, shaped from divine light to guide the wolves after they fell into bloodlust. But when she disobeyed the god who made her, her soul shattered into fragments. Each fragment was reborn through the ages, bound to different mates. Until one day, one of them would awaken the true Luna's spirit." Saren stared at the image, the shattering moon, the falling light. "You think that's me?" He didn't answer. The silence was heavy enough. "I'm not her," she said. "I'm not some goddess reborn. I'm just..." The mark on her shoulder pulsed, interrupting her. A soft breeze stirred in the chamber, though there was no wind to move it. Draven's eyes darkened. "You don't have to believe it. The mark already does." They stayed in the sanctum until the moon reached its highest point. Saren tried to rest, but every time she closed her eyes, visions stirred behind her eyelids, a battlefield beneath two moons, a woman of light weeping over a fallen wolf, and a voice that whispered her name not as Saren, but as something older. Seluna. When she awoke, the torches along the chamber walls had lit themselves. Draven stood by the entrance, speaking quietly to a shadowed figure. The newcomer's armor gleamed faintly, a messenger of the royal council. Saren rose, every nerve on edge. Draven's tone was cold. "Tell the council that the cursed Luna is dead. I buried her beneath the river myself." The messenger hesitated. "And the girls seen near the trial grounds?" "Gone. Torn apart by rogues," Draven replied without blinking. The lie rolled off his tongue like truth. The messenger nodded and left as quietly as he came. Saren stepped into the light. "You lied for me." Draven turned. "For now." "Why?" "Because the gods have already claimed you," he said, his gaze unreadable. "And if the council finds you first, they'll try to claim you too." She frowned. "And what do you plan to do with me, Alpha?" His jaw tightened. "Protect you until I understand what you are." The air between them thickened, a silence charged with something neither dared name. Her heart pounded, not entirely out of fear. There was something in his presence, something that made her wolf stir, faint and restless, beneath her skin. But the moment shattered when Draven turned away. "You'll stay here. No one enters the sanctum without my command." "And if I refuse?" He looked over his shoulder. "Then I'll make you." There was no cruelty in his tone, only certainty. It made her shiver more than any threat could have. That night, the moon shone brighter than it should have. Saren wandered the edges of the sanctum, tracing her reflection in the silver water. The mark on her shoulder pulsed softly, its light mirroring the rhythm of her heartbeat. She whispered to it, though she wasn't sure who she was speaking to. "What do you want from me?" For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, faintly, she heard it, a voice not quite human, echoing from within the water. To finish what she began. Saren froze. The pool rippled, and for an instant, she saw the reflection of another woman, the same eyes, the same hair, but her expression was ancient, sorrowful, and filled with the weight of eternity. "Find the god of shadows," the voice said. "Only he can unbind what the moon has sealed." The vision vanished. The water stilled. Saren stumbled back, breath sharp. "God of shadows," she whispered. "What does that even mean?" Draven's voice came from behind her. "It means your path just became far more dangerous than I feared." She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable but his eyes glowing faintly with golden fire. "You heard?" "I felt it," he said quietly. The sanctum trembled when the voice spoke. "Whoever that was, she wasn't just calling you. She was warning me." Saren swallowed hard. "About what?" "That I'm not the only one who's been watching you," he said. "There are forces older than this kingdom, and now, they know your name." The first light of dawn had not yet touched the mountains when Saren and Draven emerged from the sanctum. The world outside was still shrouded in mist, silver dew clinging to every leaf, every blade of grass. The storm of the night before had left the forest washed clean, but the scent of blood and magic lingered in the air. Saren walked beside him, her cloak damp, her shoulder still burning faintly with the mark. Every step felt heavy, as if the earth itself remembered her flare of power and refused to let her go easily. Draven was silent. His eyes scanned every shadow, every curve of the distant cliffs. He moved like a hunter, not a protector, though the difference between the two had blurred entirely between them. "You're tense," he said finally, his voice quiet, low. "Every muscle in your body screaming caution." Saren swallowed. "I'm not tense. I'm aware." "Call it what you like," he muttered. "But if you misstep, one wrong breath and the council will find you before I can." She kept her gaze forward. "Then teach me to misstep less." Draven studied her, the golden light of his eyes sharp, unreadable. "You think this is training?" "I think survival isn't optional." A low rumble shakes the ground beneath them, faint but persistent, the heartbeat of something immense. The path narrowed, winding toward a ravine where smoke rose unnaturally, black against the silver mist. It was not fire, though it burned with heat, curling and twisting like a living creature. "That's it," Draven said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Temple of Shadows. The god waits inside." Saren's stomach twisted. "The god?" "Yes," he said grimly. "The one who binds the darkness, and perhaps the one who can unbind what the moon has done to you." She hesitated at the threshold, the smoke rising like a living wall. Shadows coiled and writhed, whispering unintelligible words. The air smelled of ash, rain, and something ancient. "Are you coming?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Draven's jaw tightened. "I never let anyone face gods alone." She looked at him, a question in her eyes that was half challenge, half hope. He met it. And for a heartbeat, the world seemed to shrink until it was only them, a Luna marked by silver flame, and an Alpha whose past was written in blood and shadow. Wind rushes through the ravine, carrying the distant howl of wolves, alive and restless. They stepped into the smoke together. The air thickened, curling around their bodies like a living cloak. Every sound seemed swallowed, every light muted. Saren's mark flared faintly, as if sensing the presence of the god they sought. Then, from the center of the curling shadows, a figure appeared. Not solid, but not entirely air. Something between mist and muscle. Its eyes glowed with a violet fire that seemed to pierce the soul. "You have come," it said, its voice echoing in every corner at once, yet spoken softly into her mind. Saren staggered back. I don't understand. Who are you? I am the one who watches between worlds, the figure said. The god in the smoke. And you, Luna, carry the fragment that has no place in the mortal kingdom. Draven stepped in front of her. Stay back. Whatever you are, you answer to me. The god tilted its head, smoke swirling like hair in a windless storm. You protect her because you fear what she is. Yet you cannot stop what has already awakened. Saren's heartbeat accelerated. I don't know how to control it. Then learn, the god said, voice soft, infinite. Or be consumed. Draven's hand found hers, firm and grounding. You will not be alone. Her pulse fluttered at the contact. It was a small thing, almost human, almost intimate, but the effect on her wild, chaotic soul was undeniable. The fire in her chest did not dim, it blazed, responding to him. The god in the smoke observed. He cannot bind what you are. You are beyond mortal law, beyond pack, beyond moon. And yet, you are bound by your choice. Saren swallowed, feeling the weight of it all. I don't know what I am. I only know I want. I want to protect what's mine. Draven's gaze softened, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. Then start with me. Trust me. The god exhaled, a sound like wind through mountains. If you survive this night, Luna, you will not only defy the moon, but the council, the gods, and perhaps the fates themselves. Saren's jaw tightened. Then I'll survive. No matter the cost. A low rumble beneath their feet, warning or challenge, she cannot tell. The god's form began to dissipate, smoke curling upward, leaving the air heavy with power. When you are ready, find the Shadow Temple. Only there can your power be honed. Only there can the fragments be whole. Draven tightened his grip on her hand. Then we go. Saren felt the warmth of his hand seep into her, calming and fierce at once. Her silver mark pulsed, not violently, but steadily, a heartbeat she could ride, a rhythm she could trust. They stepped deeper into the ravine, following the trail of smoke toward the unseen temple. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of prophecy, power, and danger pressing against them. Yet for the first time, she didn't feel entirely afraid. She had Draven beside her. She had the fire within her. And she had the choice, the one thing even the gods could not take away. Thunder rolls in the distance, echoing like applause from some unseen audience. Above them, the first sliver of sun rose over the mountains, glinting off the mist like molten silver. It was the start of something new, a battle, a bond, and a destiny that no mortal, nor god, could ignore. Saren lifted her chin. I'm ready, she whispered. Draven's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly. Then let's see who dares stop us. And together, they walked into the smoke, toward the Shadow Temple, toward the god, and toward the destiny that had chosen her long before she had ever dared to choose herself. The path narrowed as they climbed, smoke curling around them like a living veil. The mountain's bones groaned underfoot, and every step carried the echo of centuries. Saren could feel the pulse of her power growing stronger. Her silver mark thrumming with life, like the heartbeat of something older than the world itself. Draven led, his body a shadow stretched along the misted stone. Each movement precise, silent, lethal. But every now and then, he glanced back, his golden eyes softening as they found her. That look, fierce, protective, yet almost tender, made her chest ache in a way the battle had never touched. The temple rose before them suddenly, as if the mountain had swallowed it whole and now spat it out. Its walls were carved black stone, etched with runes that hummed faintly. Smoke poured from its many arches, curling upward like fingers trying to reach the sky. The air inside smelled of ash, ozone, and something infinitely ancient, the scent of power waiting to be claimed. Saren hesitated at the threshold, her hand brushing the mark beneath her cloak. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered. Draven stepped close, his hand brushing hers. You don't need to be ready. You only need to step inside. She looked up, meeting his gaze. There was a weight to it, the kind of look that demanded trust, even when the world had taught her none. She felt the heat of it, the steady rhythm beneath his skin, and for a moment, the fear that had gripped her all her life loosened its hold. Slowly, she nodded. Then I step. Together, they entered the temple. The interior was vast, larger than any mortal structure should have been. Pillars rose like blackened trees, their runes flickering faintly in response to Saren's presence. Shadows twisted unnaturally, curling around the walls and floors like living smoke. The farther they walked, the more the air seemed to thrum with power, an invisible force pressing against their lungs, their hearts, their very souls. At the center of the temple lay a pool of silver liquid, glowing softly in the darkness. The surface rippled, reflecting the faint light of their presence. The mark on Saren's shoulder flared. The pool responded, the glow intensifying, until the reflection shifted, no longer just her own, but an older, more luminous version of herself. "You are ready," a voice whispered from the shadows. Not loud, not threatening, but deep, echoing, and impossibly old. Saren froze. "Who's there?" "I am the shadow," the voice continued. "The fragment you carry belongs to me. Yet it is incomplete, and only through trust will it awaken fully." Draven moved beside her, hand brushing her back lightly, grounding her. "You're not alone," he said softly. Her chest tightened. The sound of his voice, low and steady, wrapped around her like a cloak. I don't know if I can control it," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You can," Draven whispered. "And I'll be here, every step. Just trust me." For a heartbeat, their eyes met. She saw the fire in him, not just the alpha, but the man beneath the armor, the one who had carried loss and pain for decades. She felt something shift in her chest, warmth, certainty, a pulse of trust that wasn't fear. Slowly, she stepped toward the pool. The moment her fingers touched the silver liquid, the temple seemed to exhale. Shadows recoiled, light bent around her, and the mark on her shoulder blazed like the moon itself. Her vision blurred, and she fell to her knees. The reflection in the pool shifted again, showing images she barely understood, wolves of every shape and size, battles under twin moons, flames that devoured and healed, a man, Draven, fighting through impossible odds to protect her. A scream tore from her lips, not of fear, but of release. The silver fire surged through her, up her arms, down her spine, filling her lungs and her heart. It was terrifying, overwhelming, intoxicating. Draven dropped to one knee beside her, his hands hovering, ready to catch her if she fell. "Breathe," he urged. "Let it flow, Saren. Let it become part of you." "I'm trying." She gasped, her voice barely audible over the roar of energy in the temple. The pool rippled, shadows shivering along the walls. Slowly, the power began to obey her, flickers at first, then steady pulses. Silver light coiled along her limbs, wrapped around her torso, flowed through her fingertips. "You are the flame," the voice whispered again. "You are not cursed. You are chosen." Draven's hand found hers finally, holding tightly. "See? You've got this. You're stronger than anyone, than anything, that tries to tell you otherwise." Saren's chest heaved as the energy settled, the silver glow becoming a calm pulse instead of a raging inferno. Her mark dimmed slightly, but still shone beneath her cloak. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, heart racing. You didn't run," she whispered. "I promised," he said simply, his voice quiet, steady, and entirely human. She felt her lips part, a mixture of gratitude, relief, and something more, something dangerous and sweet that she didn't have words for. The fire inside her seemed to hum in response, a reflection of what he had stirred within her. Draven smiled faintly. "You've done more than survive tonight. You've awakened. And now, we prepare for what comes next." Outside, the wind howled, carrying the distant cries of the council's hunters, far below, unaware of the power now fully awake within the Shadow Temple. Saren swallowed, feeling her pulse calm, but her heart racing for another reason. The bond with Draven, forged in the chaos of fire, shadow, and trust, tightened in ways she hadn't expected. "I'm scared," she admitted softly, though her eyes betrayed more than just fear. "Good," he said with a faint grin. "Fear keeps you alive. But trust keeps you whole. And I've got both, right here," he said, pressing a thumb lightly over her hand. Her lips curved despite herself. "Then I'll try to trust, even if it terrifies me." Draven's smile widened. Slow, private, almost tender in a world that had none. "That's all I ask." The temple settled, shadows curling gently around them, silver light shimmering off the pool as if in approval. The night outside would not be silent for long. The council's hunters would come. The gods would watch. And the fragments of the ancient Luna would stir in ways neither of them fully understood. But for this one, rare moment, within the shadow temple beneath the moon, two souls stood together, not just as Alpha and Luna, not just as warrior and chosen, but as something far older, far deeper, a spark of defiance against a world that sought to bind them. And for the first time, Saren felt it: power, trust, and perhaps, love. The moon had climbed high above the jagged peaks when they returned to the outer keep. Shadows stretched long across the broken battlements, and the wind carried whispers of treachery from beyond the mountains. Saren's shoulders ached from the exertion of controlling her silver flame in the shadow temple, yet her heart beat faster, not from fatigue, but anticipation. Draven led the way, silent and alert. His wolf eyes glinted golden in the faint torchlight, every muscle taut with readiness. Saren followed, cloak brushing the stone floor, ears straining for the faintest sound. The air smelled of smoke and iron, of power that did not belong entirely to this world. A distant horn echoes, hollow, guttural, warning of the approaching danger. They entered the courtyard, expecting emptiness. But the shadows shifted unnaturally. Figures emerged, not fleeing, but standing. Silent, poised. The council. Saren's pulse quickened. They were more than hunters, they were executioners in silver armor, cloaks lined with runes that shimmered faintly with divine power. At their center stood a figure she had once trusted, Lyra, her former mentor, Luna of a rival pack. Lyra's eyes were cold, calculating, and the mask of friendship had long since slipped. "Saren," Lyra said softly, almost sweetly. "I see you've returned, stronger than expected." Saren's hand instinctively went to the mark beneath her cloak. "Why are you here, Lyra?" Lyra smiled, a serpent curling in her tone. "To do what needed doing." "You failed the trial on purpose, did you not?" Saren stiffened. "And you think that matters now?" "It does," Lyra replied. "Because power must be contained, not unleashed. And you are a danger to every pack, every alpha, every mortal who still believes the gods have mercy." Footsteps echo across the stone, precise, deliberate, a rhythm like war drums. Draven stepped forward, placing himself between Saren and the council. "You will not touch her." Lyra tilted her head. "And if I do? Will you stop me, Draven? Or will your own pack burn before your eyes?" The air grew thick. Shadows swirled unnaturally around the council, the ground trembling faintly beneath their feet. Saren could feel the energy building, her silver flame thrumming like a wild beast, hungry and impatient. A faint crackling of lightning echoes across the mountains, soft, foreboding. One of the council members raised a hand, and suddenly, the courtyard was bathed in white light. Magic thickened the air, and Saren's mark flared violently, burning beneath her skin. Pain lanced through her shoulder, but it was accompanied by something new: control. She could feel the power responding to her will, bending, shaping itself like molten silver. "You cannot cage me," she shouted, her voice echoing across the battlements. The silver fire erupted from her hands, spiraling into the air. Shadows twisted back as if repelled by her presence. Draven's eyes widened, admiration and concern flickering together. "Saren, He breathed, not daring to speak further as she stood tall, radiant and terrible. But Lyra was not intimidated. She advanced, voice sharp and cutting. So predictable. Always running toward your own destruction, Luna. Saren's gaze hardened. I am not your pawn. Lightning arced across the sky, illuminating the scene, wolf warriors frozen mid-step, the council's runes glowing, Draven's hand gripping the hilt of his sword. Time seemed to stretch, the moment hovering between chaos and catastrophe. A heartbeat passes, heavy, slow, echoing through stone and flesh. Then it happened. Betrayal in the purest form. One of Draven's soldiers, loyal as she thought, stepped forward and lowered his sword, bowing slightly to Lyra. His eyes were cold, calculating, and in that instant, the courtyard shifted from battlefield to trap. Saren gasped. No. Draven's jaw tightened. Traitor. The soldier smirked, raising a small vial that glowed with silver light. The Luna's power must be bound, he said. Or destroyed. Before anyone could react, he threw it. The vial shattered against the stone. A shockwave erupted, forcing Draven to shield Saren instinctively. Pain lanced through her, fire erupting from her mark to protect them both. The ground cracked beneath their feet, stones flying like shrapnel. When the dust settled, Lyra stood at the edge of the courtyard, calm and cold. Do you see now, Luna? She asked. Even those you trust will betray you. Even those who claim to protect you. Saren's silver eyes blazed. I don't need their trust. I have mine. Draven's voice was low, near her ear. Then fight with it. Let them see what happens when the fire refuses to be caged. And fight she did. The silver flame erupted from her body fully, a tide of power that bent reality itself. Wolves screamed, shadows recoiled, and even the council staggered. Draven moved like a shadow beside her, his golden eyes blazing, swords carving arcs of light in perfect rhythm with her fire. The courtyard became chaos incarnate, light and shadow, power and fury, trust and betrayal intertwined in a deadly dance. Saren felt something shift within her, not fear, not hesitation, but clarity. The betrayal, the council, the gods, none of it mattered. Only the moment, the fire, the man beside her. The wind howled, echoing their power. A distant mountain trembled. Finally, when the smoke and light began to fade, only a few figures remained standing. The courtyard was scarred, the council broken, the traitor gone, either dead or fled. Saren's mark still glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat, warning that the storm inside her was far from over. Draven reached for her, hands steady. You survived. And more than that, you burned brighter than anyone dared imagine. Saren exhaled, the tension in her muscles easing slightly. She began, voice trembling, I didn't think I could do it. You did, he said simply. Because you are not just Luna. You are mine. And together, nothing can stop us. The camera of the narration, the world itself, seems to exhale, the first glimmer of dawn slicing through storm clouds over the mountains. Saren looked at him, her chest tight, her heart racing not from danger, but from proximity, from connection, from the raw truth of their bond. Then, what now? Draven's hand lingered over hers. Now, we prepare. For them. For the gods. For everyone who thinks they can touch what belongs to the fire. Thunder rolls softly, a distant echo of coming storms, danger yet to come. Saren's silver eyes met his. The bond had deepened, the fire had awakened, and the betrayal had sharpened her resolve. There was no turning back. Not now. Not ever. Dawn had barely touched the mountains when the tremor came. The earth beneath the keep shivered as though waking from a long, haunted dream. Saren stood at the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley, her cloak whipping in the wind, silver flames flickering faintly from her shoulders. Every muscle in her body thrummed with energy, not just the residual power from the Shadow Temple, but something older, something eternal stirring deep inside her. Draven stood behind her, his eyes scanning the horizon. The wind caught his cloak, tossing it dramatically, and for a moment, he looked less like a man and more like a shadowed legend. "They're coming," he said simply. Saren's jaw tightened. "Then let them come. I'm not hiding anymore." The distant horns of war echoed from the valley below, council forces, rogue packs, and those who feared her power all converging in a wave of steel and shadow. The first wave of attackers surged into view, and the ground trembled beneath their synchronized steps. Wolves howled, some loyal to the council, some wild and untamed, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. The air smelled of blood, wet earth, and the sharp tang of magic. Saren's silver mark pulsed. She lifted her hands, letting the fire from the shadow temple rise freely. A wave of heat rolled across the cliff, lighting the morning mist in ghostly silver hues. Shadows shrieked as the flames touched them, curling back, writhing like living things in pain. Draven's sword flashed in his hand, carving streaks of golden light through the chaos. Every movement of his was precise, every stance protective, and every glance toward Saren communicated a silent promise: "I will not let them take you. Not now, not ever." Her pulse quickened. The silver flame surged along her spine, wrapping around her arms, legs, and torso. She had never felt power like this, raw, unfiltered, alive. And yet, for the first time, she felt no fear. Only purpose. A low, almost musical vibration resonates from the valley, a signal that the gods themselves are watching. The first of the council's champions reached the cliff's edge. Lyra, eyes cold and unyielding, stood at the forefront, her hand raised high. "You will fall, Luna," she declared, her voice slicing through the wind like a blade. "You will be the sacrifice that restores balance." Saren laughed, sharp, fiery, full of defiance. "I am not your sacrifice." With that, she leapt forward. Silver fire erupted from her hands, arcing toward the enemy in a cascade of light that split the morning mist. Wolves and soldiers alike were thrown back, their armor melting under the intensity of her flame. Shadows recoiled, and the ground itself cracked as if acknowledging the power she now wielded. Draven moved to her side, golden light spiraling from his sword as he carved through enemies with lethal precision. Their movements synchronized perfectly, predator and mate, alpha and Luna, flame and shadow intertwined. A deep rumble shakes the cliff, echoing through the mountains, a warning, or perhaps a herald of greater danger. Lyra's expression flickered, a shadow of doubt crossing her features. "This cannot be," she hissed, launching herself forward with a deadly grace. Saren met her head-on. Their clash sent silver sparks flying, flames and shadows colliding in a violent dance. Every strike Saren made was precise, every dodge guided by the ancient knowledge of her bloodline, every breath a declaration of independence. Draven intercepted another attacker, his sword glowing gold, striking with strength and speed only a master of centuries could wield. "Saren," he shouted over the roar of battle. "Focus. Channel it. Don't let them define you." Her silver flames flared brighter, coiling around her body, transforming her into something both terrifying and magnificent. For a brief moment, the battlefield was silent except for the sound of her heartbeat and the crackle of her power. A sudden gust of wind lifts her cloak, revealing the full mark of the Luna on her shoulder, glowing like molten moonlight. Lyra faltered, shock widening her eyes. "Impossible." Saren's voice rang clear, every syllable a weapon. "I am not yours to claim. I am not a pawn. I am the flame, the fire, and I will not bow." Silver light erupted in a wave, sweeping across the battlefield. Council soldiers were thrown back, shadows screamed, and the mountain seemed to bow to her power. Draven moved to her side, gripping her shoulder, anchoring her in the storm. "You've claimed it," he murmured. "You've claimed yourself." Her chest heaved, heart pounding, sweat and fire mixing as the realization hit. She was no longer the girl hiding in the shadows. She was a force, ancient, untamed, unstoppable. The wind dies suddenly. The battlefield stills. The council, terrified, begins to retreat. Draven leaned close, his voice low and intimate. You've done more than survive. You've shown them all that nothing can cage you. Not prophecy, not gods, not even betrayal. Saren's silver eyes softened, and for the first time, her voice trembled, not with fear, but with emotion she could not name. I couldn't have done it without you. He smiled, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. You've always had it in you. I just reminded you. Their proximity, the heat of the battle, the lingering danger, it all coiled together into a single, electric moment. Saren felt it deep within her chest, the connection, the trust, the spark that had been growing since the Shadow Temple. She closed her eyes, letting herself breathe. The silver flame pulsed in harmony with her heartbeat, steady and strong. The mountains echoed with their triumph, not over the council, not over the traitors, but over fear itself. Draven's hand lingered over hers. Together, he said softly. Always together. Saren opened her eyes, and in them burned the fire of a Luna who had claimed her power, her destiny, and, perhaps unknowingly, the heart of the Alpha beside her. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance, a reminder that this victory was only the beginning. Shadows would rise again. Gods would watch. But for now, she was free, radiant, and untouchable. The battlefield lay quiet now, but the air was thick with tension. Smoke drifted lazily across the cliff, mingling with the early morning mist. Saren's silver flame had dimmed, but its warmth lingered, a heartbeat beneath her skin, reminding her that she was alive, untouchable, unstoppable. Draven stood beside her, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. Wolves, council soldiers, and shadows alike had fled, but the danger had not vanished. It had merely retreated, watching, calculating. Saren's gaze fell on the mountains in the distance. Her mark pulsed softly, and for a moment, the weight of prophecy pressed against her chest. She was not just a Luna. She was a spark of defiance, a challenge to gods, to kings, to anyone who thought they could bind her fire. Draven's hand found hers, thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. They'll be back, he murmured. And so will the others. She nodded, eyes narrowing with determination. Then we'll be ready. We won't bow. We won't hide. We will fight, and we will win. The wind swept across the mountains, carrying the distant howls of wolves, a chorus for the unclaimed, the untamed, the brave. Her voice softened, almost to herself. Would you have chosen me, or feared me too? Draven's gaze locked on hers, unflinching. I see you. All of you. And I choose you. Always. Saren's heart fluttered at the words, not fear, not doubt, only the fierce, blazing certainty of trust. She could feel the bond between them, stronger than steel, brighter than fire. A faint rumble echoes in the distance, a reminder that the story is far from over. The gods are watching, the council is regrouping, and the mountains themselves tremble with expectation. Are you ready? Draven asked, voice low, intimate, steady. Saren took a deep breath. I've never been more ready in my life. The camera of the narration, the world itself, pauses here, the silence filled with possibility. If this story lit something inside you, if you felt the fire, the betrayal, the love, subscribe to Moon King Chronicles. Here, we tell tales that burn. The shadows stir. As the sun rose higher, spilling golden light across the mountains, Saren and Draven walked along the cliff's edge. The battlefield was behind them, the council and traitors in retreat, yet the air vibrated with anticipation. The wind picked up suddenly, rustling leaves, sending shivers down Saren's spine. A voice whispered, not from the mountains, not from the council, but from the shadows themselves. She is not the only one. Saren froze. The mark on her shoulder pulsed, brighter than ever, warning her of unseen watchers. Draven's hand tightened around hers. What is it? She whispered. The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet, a deeper voice echoed from the distant forest. The words were low, ancient, promising trials and challenges that not even gods could predict. Saren's eyes narrowed, a mixture of fear and exhilaration igniting within her. Then we'll face them. All of them. Draven smiled faintly, shadowed and dangerous. Together. The wind swept over the mountains, carrying whispers of destiny, power, and the promise of battles yet to come. Wolves howled in the distance, calling to mates, challengers, and those marked by fire. Saren looked at him, the first soft smile breaking through her weariness. The silver flame within her thrummed like a heartbeat, steady, alive, claiming every part of her that had once doubted. She was no longer a girl running from fate. She was the Luna who had faced betrayal, claimed power, and chosen love on her own terms. And now, the world, gods, council, rivals, and shadows alike, would have to reckon with her. Thunder rolls softly in the distance, the first note of a story yet unwritten, a sequel waiting in the wings. Draven's golden eyes met hers. Whatever comes next, he said quietly, we face it together. No hesitation. No fear. Saren's silver eyes glinted. Then let them come. I am ready. The wind carried their words across the mountains, a promise, a challenge, and the first note of a legend that would be told for generations. The camera of the narration pans upward, sunlight catching the cliffs, the mist curling like ghosts, the silver mark glowing faintly beneath Saren's cloak. The world is vast, dangerous, and full of secrets, yet for this one moment, she is unstoppable. And somewhere, in the shadows, the next threat stirs, the gods whisper, and the story continues.